The examples that pertain to Montana tribes is this history that Montana tribes are sort of a microcosm of Indian country across the nation, tribes that expand from tribes that are fairly open to outsiders, fairly open to economic and political experimentation, to tribes that are quite closed and wanting to retain their cultural and social traditions. One of the major factors is that you have the first so-called IRA tribe here in Montana, the Indian Reorganization Act tribe, that bought into an essentially new political framework for being, and that was the Salish Kootenai back in 1934. They became an IRA government. And other tribes, the Crow primarily, said we want to retain our historic traditional governance. We're going to reject the IRA. We don't want to have representative constitutional democratic government. So this idea of tribes being who they choose to be, taking the option to sort of opt out of the what people might see as the normal American system of governance, quite powerful. You think about how the Yellowtail family figured so prominently into that. Bill Yellowtail being recently a candidate for Congress, well-turned-out fellow, very bright, went to Dartmouth College. You think about his dad, Bob Yellowtail, the first Indian superintendent of Crow, handpicked by Felix Cohen and Collier to basically persuade the tribe to buy the IRA as a new system of relationship, a political legal system, a redefinition of the Indian people. And despite people's best efforts, and Bob Yellowtail, to all accounts, was kind of divided himself, whether to take his Indian people down this path. So I think what you find is, in Montana, you find almost every attitude that Indian people can have about the influence of non-Indian politics, non-Indian society, non-Indian economics, non-Indian culture. So I think that's why Montana is worthy of study. It's sort of one of these states in which it's sort of now in between. It's neither the old West nor the new West. Sort of still different forces contesting for its soul and its identity. Same with the Indian people. They have fundamental choices to make, and that's the nature of sovereignty, that you're confronted with these forks in the road. Like our good friend, the poet laureate of America, Yogi Berra, used to say when he talked to kids, he'd say, you come to a fork in the road, take it. That's sort of the choices that Indian people are confronted with sometimes. They have those choices, yet they don't have any clear markers as to which fork they should take. There have been several cases that have really been counter-sovereignty cases in Montana, but the couple of cases that have been favorable. One is perhaps the most recent example of the growth in sovereignty, and that's called tribes as states. When you look back and you look at the rise of what's called environmentalism, an idea that basically we should learn as people to live in harmony with our resources and respect those resources in a stewardship way. Indian tribes were finally included in that process. 1980s, there were amendments to a major federal environmental statute such as the Clean Water Act. And those amendments are called Tribes as States Amendments, in which Indian tribes were placed on, quote, equal footing with states. And states have the right to assume what they call primary regulatory roles in deciding the level or quality of waters they want in their respective states. Indian tribes were given that opportunity. So one tribe here in Montana, I don't know if other tribes have followed, Confederated Salish and Kootenai, applied for task status or designation with the EPA and received it. The state of Montana, because they disagreed or feared that the Indian tribe would ask for too high quality of water, a water quality standard with absolutely almost no pollution, and thereby threaten the sort of hoped for industrial future of Montana, sued the administrator of EPA, Carol Browner. And surprisingly, the suit went all the way to the Ninth Circuit, and the Indian tribe and the EPA prevailed, realizing that among those emerging sovereign values of importance to Indian people, just as environment is important to Americans, that they should decide. They should choose what water quality standards they want, even as against the wishes the state of Montana perhaps to dirty the water up more than is right. So those are the examples of pro-sovereignty. There have been other cases in which Indian tribes here have won control of major resources. For example, you look again at Flathead Lake, perhaps the premier resort area, the destination for both Montanans and non-Montanans that come to the west, come to Montana. Mid-1980s, the Indian tribes felt that the lake was being developed in the wrong way, that its shoreline, its resources were being disrespected, and they sued, saying, really, we own most of that lake. And it was quite surprising that ultimately the circuit courts agreed, assigning the south half of Flathead to the control of the Indian tribes. So they control the shoreline, they control the access, and they worked in a way that's responsible, I think, both in terms of development and stewardship. Quite a